I'm Kate Thomas of North End Leisure, and we're going to go over how to sell Ireland, Scotland, and England. Let's get into it. So first things first. Hey, hi, hello, that is me. I'm Kate. I'm the owner of North End Leisure, and I partner up with Tiernan Travel. We're a boutique DMC for Ireland and the UK. We handle all over Ireland, including Northern Ireland, and all over the UK. So that is England, Scotland, and Wales. All right. Now, I have always been on the supplier side of the industry, and I've always worked with travel advisors. So I know firsthand from working with you guys how hard it can be to be a modern travel advisor, right? Knowing the destinations, running your business, and just dealing with things that are changing all of the time. So allow me to take something off your plate. All right. What we're going to go over today is the basics so that you can hop on your consult calls when someone requests one of these destinations with confidence, kind of getting the details you need to send it off to your supplier. Hopefully that means you are emailing me, and also building authority with your client, right? So meet Christine. She's the managing director of Tiernan Travel and leads the operations team. Her and I have been working together since post-COVID. We knew each other before, and then decided to, our forces combined afterwards. So she's based in the Cotswolds. I handle all marketing, sales, and education here stateside, and she handles the operations in destination, right? So when you are actually ready to plan your trip, once we're kind of past the preliminary part, then Christine or someone on the team is going to be putting that together for you. So let's talk about selling Ireland, Scotland, and England. The destinations themselves, very much ancient castles meets modern culture, set in dramatic landscapes. That description works across all of them, all right? There's so much overlap, and as you probably know, they're often combined, right? So very, very common to put two or three together if your client has enough time. But who is the ideal traveler? Well, families and multi-gens, it's very easy to create a really nice itinerary that is great for grandparents and great for young kids. All right, these destinations work perfectly for that. Also in that same vein, it's not listed here, groups, easy to put together here as well. So couples, your solo travelers, first-time international travelers, I love recommending Ireland and UK for that because they're English-speaking, they're very easy to navigate, and they're very welcoming to tourists and to Americans. So it's a really nice entry point if you have a client who hasn't traveled worldwide very much yet, okay? And we can do mid-range to luxury budgets there. In terms of interest, nature and outdoors. Listen. Ireland, UK has nature outdoors in major supply. We can set up all sorts of stuff. It can be hiking, kayaking. We can do golfing. We can do fishing. We can do, what do they call it? Coasteering. All sorts of outdoor activities. Very easy to work in. It's great for your people who want to taste the local delights. So, whiskey, of course, also gin and beer experiences across these destinations. Golfers, clearly some of the best golf courses are, especially in Scotland and in Ireland. So anywhere across the board, if you got the hardcore golfer where they're just looking for tea time, or what we tend to get more commonly is people who want to work in a round or two in the context of their itinerary. Very easy. We can arrange that for you. Ancestry. So tracing roots and your heritage. This can be as detailed as your client would want it to be. We can arrange with a genealogist who would get information from them ahead of time and then present them with a report when they arrive. Or if they don't want to go that far with it, it can be as simple as, hey, we know our family's from County Cork, and we would work that into the itinerary for them so that they can visit that area. All right. It's great for history buffs. It's great for people who are into the culture. There's such a strong history of literature and music that is very alive and well across these destinations. Let's talk about seasons. All right. When to go, when to send your clients. Now, in terms of weather, it is temperate and mild year round. It doesn't get super, super hot. It doesn't get super, super cold. That's less of a factor. In terms of what to wear, it's always layers. Layers. But pricing, crowds, your daylight hours, That's the stuff that can really make a bigger impact on your client's trip. All right. So we're going to kind of go over the different seasons here. All right, high season. It's May to September. This is when it's going to be the busiest and obviously the highest pricing across the board. Availability can be challenging once you're getting closer out, and especially for stuff that's in demand, like a castle stay. Everyone asks to stay in a castle. Those do book out the fastest. All right. Now, weather and days. In the summer, average temps are in the 60s. Your longest days are going to be July and August. So what to know about when to book? This is mainly for high season that you need to think about booking earlier just so you have more availability. This is especially true if your client is on the more moderate budget option. If you've got a luxury client they're not concerned about their budget, there's going to be more stuff available, right? It's when you have your more budget clients, your more moderate clients, that's where it's going to be harder, because what books up fastest in those castles and 5-star hotels is the lower category rooms. So often then it'll either be booked out or there might only be suites left, right? So that's going to change what options they have. So it's best to book in fall of the year ahead. Otherwise, in Q1, we close most of our trips in Q1 of that year for the summer. And availability will tighten as Q1 goes, right? So in January, things are still looking good. February, we're getting tight. March, even tighter, all right? So the earlier you can get things closed in there for the summer, the better. In terms of availability, it doesn't mean we can't get it done, still send it over, but that's kind of the guidelines there, all right? So now let's talk about shoulder season. We've got April, we've got October. Now, in terms of pricing and availability, this is a really high value time because the weather is similar to high season, but the pricing is better. Just between those 2 months, something to be aware of for April, Easter weekend tends to have a little bit higher pricing. That's just because it's a popular weekend for domestic travel. So a lot of the hotels are putting on, events for the weekend, and people are within destination are doing a domestic weekend away. So that's a little bit of something to keep on your radar, but overall, generally very easy to book across April and October. Temperature wise, you're in the 50s on average. It can be colder. What I want you to take note of here is that the days get much shorter starting in the second half of October. By the end of October, you're looking sunset at 4 p.m. All right. So if you have a client, especially a self-drive client, who's looking at those dates, that's just something to keep in mind. They do not have as much daylight hours to actually be out and about sightseeing. They're probably going to be back to the hotel much earlier. All right. So just something to keep in mind. Now, in terms of when to book, again, always better if you can book it fall in the year ahead or Q1. October dates, though, you're going to have a lot more leeway. We are booking October all through the summer. All right. And then we've got low season, right? That leaves what's left, low season, November to March. That does exclude festive. Festive across Ireland and UK, you're looking Christmas and New Year's. Generally, how that works is they do multi-day packages because most things are going to be closed. So the hotel is the destination for those couple of days. So especially for Christmas, it's generally a 3-day package with the 24th, 25th, and 26th. They will do meals and celebrations there. So the hotel makes it a full thing. And then for New Year's tends to be packages, but you can also find stuff that's a single night over New Year's. Okay. Now, obviously festive has festive pricing, but outside of that, availability generally not a problem. And that's the best pricing. So it's going to be the lowest pricing all year round. Average temps, you're looking 30s, 40s, but the days are going to be short. And a lot of stuff does close down over the winter, mostly in the countryside. If you're in the cities, city attractions, city hotels, that's going to be open. It's when you go out into the countryside. Any of our smaller countryside properties generally close for winter, as do a lot of the attractions. And any attraction that would be more weather dependent, they generally close over the winter. All right. So when to book, generally outside of festive, which you need to book nice and in advance, the rest of the season, it's open. We can always kind of take that on, make it work, right? There's generally availability. So let's going to talk about each destination separately a bit. We're going to start with Ireland. So getting there. Here's what I want you to notice. So this isn't all the airports, but this is the main airports that clients from the US are coming into. Dublin, Shannon, and Belfast. Most are doing Dublin, Shannon. Dublin's going to have the most flight options for nonstops especially. It is the busiest of these three. It's very common though for us to do into Dublin and out of Shannon or vice versa. What I want you to really note here is that both Dublin and Shannon, these are the only two airports across Ireland and UK that have this, but they have US pre-clearance. That means your client is going to go through customs and immigration in Dublin or in Shannon before they go home. So when they land, it's just like landing for a domestic flight. They get their bag and go. They do not have to like go through customs on arrival, which is nice. And I always like to point that out. One, because it's nice to know, but two, if you're doing like a multi-country stay, I usually recommend start with UK, end with Ireland, because then when they fly out, they can do a pre-clearance airport on the way out. All right. Also, Shannon is well located to end with a castle stay. Both Dromoland Castle and Adair Manor are near Shannon. Belfast has the least options and generally has more stops and higher price points for coming in and out. So it sort of depends on where they're coming from. Now, Belfast does work great if you are connecting it with UK because it can have a lot of short hot flights over from Belfast into Scotland, for example. We do highly recommend that you always check flights before sending over a request, just because it can impact the itinerary so much. It's good to know ahead of time. So if you look this up and they were thinking that they were going to fly into Shannon, but you look it up and you're like, oh, it wouldn't be a nonstop from where they are and they want a nonstop, then we know that's off the table and we can plan accordingly. All right. Now, in terms of getting around, I'm going to cover this for each, but this advice is generally the same across the board. We could do self-drive, private driver, or rail. Your self-drive, it's going to be the most flexible. It's the most economical. They do have to drive on the other side of the road. That's across Ireland and the UK. They don't need any special license. None of that is required. It's just that you're driving on the opposite side. All right. Private driver. This is what we recommend whenever budget allows. Obviously, it's more luxury and it's going to maximize your time, and it really allows providing context. So when they're out and about touring from place to place and the guide can tell them everything that they're seeing here and there and everywhere. It's also nice if they plan to do any tastings because Ireland and UK have a zero tolerance policy for drinking and driving. All right. So if that is on the itinerary, I recommend we do a driver. Otherwise, somebody's going to have to be the DD for the trip. Now for rail, in Ireland in particular, I don't recommend, like obviously you don't have to drive. That's nice. It's just the least flexible option. And I'm going to show you why. I don't recommend it in Ireland unless we're doing, if it's a city hop type trip, that works, right? Galway to Dublin, 2 hours, easy peasy. Dublin to Belfast, 2 hours, easy peasy. It's when you're trying to see the countryside stuff, it's going to be more limited. But also here's where I want you to notice. Do you see this break here between these two squares? So that's in Dublin. These two stations, Dublin Connolly and Dublin Houston, probably a half hour, a little less apart in terms of like if you got out of one, took a cab to the other. That's the split. You see it's like two main systems, but they're split here. So if you're thinking, okay, they can be up here in Northern Ireland and then want to do a rail trip and end up over here in Mayo, well, they can't just go over there, right? Like they have to come down, switch trains, go over, come up here. So it's a lot less flexible. So if they're doing a city hop trip, sure. Otherwise, I don't recommend planning a rail trip if they're trying to do a lot of countryside and like see the full place. So let's talk about routes. What's common? If you've got 5 nights or less, generally we're looking at a 2-stop itinerary and you're going to be mindful of the airport choice, right? If you want to be able to see more, you need to do Belfast and Shannon or Dublin and Shannon, right? Instead of having to loop back to one or the other. If we're doing 6 to 9 nights long, the most popular route is that southern route. That's Dublin down along through Kilkenny or to Cork, over to Kerry, and up to Shannon to depart out from there, or the northern route, which you do Belfast, up around Aitrim, maybe to Donegal, and out of Belfast or out of Dublin. Once you get more nights, if we're looking 10 to 14, we're going to do what I would call, well, mostly, it depends on the client request, of course. This is just the most common, what I call a J-shaped itinerary, where you might start up in Belfast, and then you work your way down. It's like adding Belfast onto that southern route, and work your way over to Shannon for the way out, or maybe even up to Mayo and back over to Dublin. Now, if you have 2 weeks, that's when we can start talking about doing a full loop. So just know if you have a client who's like, they're looking to do the full Irish loop, they're going to need at least 2 weeks to get it done. All right. Now, some considerations in terms of availability. You've got St. Patrick's Day, of course. In August, it changes, the date, exact date changes a bit every year. There's always an American football game in Dublin, and the city sells out. All right. At the end of July, early August, you've got the Galway races. That's a very busy time as well. And in June, you've got Bloomsday and a few festival days around it. Otherwise, generally speaking, again, castles, that's where you're gonna book quickly. And same if you need connecting rooms, because there's only so many sets in each property. So those are the things that can be booked a little bit faster. So let's talk about Scotland. Getting there. All right. So, again, we want you to check ahead of time, because depending on what route they need to take is going to have a huge impact on the itinerary. But Edinburgh is the most common, 20 to 30 minutes into city center. Glasgow is the next most common. You can do 15 minutes into the city center there. Inverness has fewer US options. There are some, but it does have some good domestic connections. So that can work nicely for multi-destination trips. Now, in terms of getting around, again, self-drive versus private driver versus rail, same advice as Ireland. We do book rail more for Scotland than we do for Ireland, but there are similar challenges. This is the Scottish rail map. Now, as you can see, it's a bit more available. Now, the routes of stuff that we would be commonly doing, it would be, Edinburgh up to Inverness, I'd say, is what gets booked the most. But if they're trying to do any countryside stuff, it doesn't work quite as well. And if they're trying to add any of the islands on, then that doesn't work well either, right? Because you can see where the train stops and the island is here. And if they want to be able to get around there, right? So then you're looking at maybe doing day trips from major cities. So it's a little bit better than Ireland in terms of like how far you can get around, but still, we mostly are booking self-drives and driver guide. So let's talk about common routes for Scotland. 5 nights, same thing. Two stops, depending on the airport. All right. If once we're at 6 to 9 nights, that's sort of our most common time frame. That's when we're going to be doing Edinburgh. You can go up into Inverness in the Highlands and then come down and leave for Glasgow. If you're on the longer end of that range, you could fit in the Isle of Skye. All right. Which is a super popular request. Once you get to 10 to 14 nights, well, it's kind of that same overall route, but then you either have more time, you can add in more islands, or you can spend some time over on the east side in Speyside or south of Glasgow in Ayrshire. Or the other option, there would be adding on a London stay. So do London up to Edinburgh and around, all right, out of Glasgow. Once you're doing 2 or more weeks, then typically it looks like getting combined with London and some English countryside. Again, it's always custom to your client. That's just the most common thing we see. All right, so let's talk about dates. Notable dates for Scotland. In August, all of August is extremely busy for Edinburgh. That's the most expensive time. That is the busiest time. That's when you definitely want to plan ahead. Why is it so busy? Well, you've got the Edinburgh Fringe Festival going on all month, and you also have the Royal Military Tattoo going on. If you have clients that want to go to the tattoo, we can arrange that, all right? From May through September, there's Highland Games happening at different locations, so it can cause like a little bit busier here and there, although generally not nearly as impactful as what's going on in Edinburgh in August. You've got Burns Night in January, and you've got New Year's Eve, Hogmanay in Scotland. So again, castles, you're noticing a theme? Castles are going to book out quickly, but also islands. The islands are going to book out quickly. So if you have a client who is looking to visit the islands off of Scotland, then that's something we want to make sure that we're arranging far enough in advance, because there's just limited inventory. There's less properties and there's smaller properties. So once they're booked, they are booked. And now let's talk about England. Let's talk about getting there. Most common is, of course, London. So into Heathrow or into Gatwick, generally. Heathrow is about hour and a half into central London. Gatwick's a little bit further, hour and a half to 2 hours into central London. And Manchester is further north, and they do have some nonstop options from the US. So this is a great place if you're doing like a Northern England itinerary or Northern Wales itinerary included into this. All right. Getting around. Again, notice the theme. Same option, self-drive, private driver, or rail. We book more rail for England than we do in Ireland or Scotland. All right, so we least rail Ireland, then Scotland, England, we book the most rail. All right, so the train goes to most cities. You could take a look at this map. You can see that it is like the coverage is a bit more widespread. But again, same limitations, right? You're limited to going to cities and then joining day tours or hiring a driver for a day. It doesn't work as well if your client's trying to see anywhere that is more remote. What I want you to associate with rail, because I know I'm covering a lot, is if someone asks you for rail and in that same request, they're also asking for off the beaten path, those things don't go together. All right. So just know that right away. They don't work together, because trains aren't going off the beaten path. They're staying on the path. All right. So let's talk about common routes for England. 2 nights or less. Again, 5 nights or less. Again, we're looking at 2 stops. What this almost always looks like in practice is generally people are doing London and the Cotswolds. For 6 to 9 nights, we're usually looking at London, Bath, and Cotswolds. Also could fit in a castle stay. If you're thinking, hey, I know we could do other stuff in 9 nights, we could go to different parts. Of course you can. I'm telling you, this is the stuff that gets booked the most and what you're most likely to see come in on a request. For 10 to 14 nights, then we're looking London, Bath, Cotswolds. We've got extra days. We can fit in a little bit more authentic day trips. The Cotswolds covers a huge area, so you could spend a very long time there without seeing all of the things, all right? Or maybe we're working and going down to Cornwall for a few days here too. And then once we're at 14 plus, once we're 2 weeks and up, then we're looking at, okay, we've got Northern England, we're going to the Lakes District, we're doing York. Again, this is just common routes. There's 1,000,001 combinations that this could look like in practice, depending on what your client is asking for. So let's talk about some dates for England, right? So mid-March, we've got the Cheltenham festivals. The Cotswolds are sold out then. The London Marathon is in April. The Chelsea Flower Show, that is big every year. That goes down in May. Royal Ascot in June. You're going to have some big rate spikes then. Same for Wimbledon and Fashion Week. All right. So let's talk about some info just for selling in general. And I know I'm covering this fast. So I want your kind of takeaways from what's above is sort of like, what do we do first when someone reaches out? Well, we're going to look at those flights. We're going to see where they're coming in and out of, because that is going to impact what's available. We never want to put together a proposal only that they fall in love with, only to find out as soon as you check air that it won't work. Because I'm going to tell you from experience, anything you send after that, they don't like it as much. That's good. You are playing from behind. So save yourself. Always check flights first, and then we build the itinerary for them. So that we're just showing them what is actually possible for them. And then the other thing, kind of key takeaways that works across the board, is in terms of how to get around. Self-drive is most common of what we book. Driver is what we always recommend if a budget will allow. And rail works kind of sometimes, and more so England, a little bit less so Scotland, and even less so for Ireland. But generally, you're going to be using rail when it's just like city to a city. All right. So now we're going to cover some more info just to know for selling, kind of keep in mind how long. The biggest challenge for American travelers, for our clientele, is time. I'm sure you know this. Getting enough time off is tough. The average trip length for us is 9 nights. All right. So all of these 6 to 9 night options, that's what we're really booking mostly, because on average it's 9 nights. One thing that comes up pretty often is clients will be asking to try and do Ireland and Scotland, let's say. But if they only have 9 nights, we'll do it if it's what they want. I'll tell you, we don't recommend it. Why? Because you already have like a shorter time frame, and to try and do 2 countries, and you burn down a day on logistics. Even though it's a short flight, right? It's only an hour over. By the time you pack up all your stuff, take your transfer to the airport, wait at the airport, fly over, get your taxi to your hotel, get settled. You've totally burned down a day. Additionally, you're just not going to get out and see nearly as much or travel as far, because in that few of nights, you're going to have to stay closer. We have to get you back to the airport to depart. Okay? So now let's talk pricing. How much? Now, as a travel pro, you know, what does it cost is usually answered with, it depends. And that is true here as well. But at Northern Leisure, we will work with moderate budgets and up. So what exactly does that mean? We're looking at $750 per person per day, and high season is our current recommendation. I am recording this in early 2026. All right. But I have broken out estimated starting price points across all seasons, and you can always find that information. So I'm going to show you what that looks like here. I have a pricing guide. So it's going to give you starting from price points across all seasons, across if it's driver guide, 4-star, 5-star, etc. Okay. You can access this at any time if you go to northernleisure.com. And when you click on the plan your trip, that's just our intake form. It lives on our intake form. You'll see right here, like reference point on starting budgets, go here. So depending on when you're seeing this, if I am talking to you from the past, and maybe that advice has changed, it will always be up to date on here. So you can go to our intake form and reference those starting price points. So that's another thing where you can feel confident coming in, like when a client comes to you, wanting to do a consult and start talking about one of these destinations, you have some reference points to start talking to them about budget. Now, what if their budget's lower? All right. Because I'll tell you, we did go up. We went up in 2026 after holding at a lower number for a few years past, just because we had to, prices continue to rise. What if it's lower? Listen, there is flexibility. If it's a lower request, please still feel free to reach out. We will tell you if we cannot do it. Okay. If your client is more open to stuff that's a little off the beaten path and not like stuff that's in the top highlights that they're hearing all the time, then we've got some tricks up our sleeve. Reach out. Okay. We'll always try to do it if we can. If it's a lot lower, then we may not be able for us to take it, but it might still be doable for you to either FIT it on your own or with a budget operator. But I'm just gonna be honest, we don't go under a certain level here because it's not worth it to us to compromise on the quality, right? Like we're not gonna send your clients off somewhere where we think they might come back and complain because everyone's fine with that in the pricing portion. Until they get there and they're like, I don't like this, right? So we don't go below a certain quality level. And I'm just going to also be transparent here in terms of where we fall in line with other DMCs and other operators. We're kind of in the middle. We're in this nice little middle pocket, right? There's budget operators who are doing lower and stuff, some stuff that we won't book that are down here that we can give you recommendations for if you have a budget client. And there are also operators who will only take on stuff that is like ultra high end. All right. And we are in that nice moderate middle. So we do moderate and up in terms of budgets. Now, what if their budget's higher? Well, friend, that is easy to accommodate. All right. Ireland and UK is their oyster. There's so many luxury and exclusive experiences to be had. So whether that is we're just adding some small splurges, right? If they're a little bit higher, right? Like, okay, now instead of just booking some tastings, we're doing a little bit more private, a little private tour here, a little private tour there, a little exclusive sprinkle here. Medium spending, right? That's when we're doing, okay, we've got our driver guide throughout. We're staying in suites everywhere and we've got extra experiences sprinkled in. You get that client with sky's the limit budget. Well, we've got a lot of tricks up our sleeve, all right? We want to book out a full castle, we could do that. You want everything to be private, we could do that. You want everything to be private and custom where they're the only ones who do that, we can do that when they're at that price point, okay? Meaning there is no price, all right? So that's generally not our typical client coming to us, because like I said, we will do moderate and up, but we can absolutely pull it off for you when you get those higher end clients. So now let me go over some FAQ that comes up a lot for people when they reach out to a DMC, if you're new to me. All right, so what destinations do we handle? We do Ireland. Yes, we do Northern Ireland. We do Scotland, Wales, and England. The reason I didn't break out Wales for its own thing here is because generally speaking, we almost never get a request that is only for Wales unless they're going for an event. They're going to like a friend's having a wedding there, etc. It generally gets tacked on with either Scotland or England. All right. So what will we book? We handle ground arrangements. So we do not do airfare, but we take care of everything else. So accommodations, the rental car or the driver guide, whether that is driver guide throughout or day trips here, there, transfers, other guiding services, any activities, entrances, special experiences. Pretty much you take care of the air booking to get them there. We've got them covered on the ground. Minimum budget, we have gone over that. Special experiences, can we arrange special experiences? Absolutely. We work with a lot of unique experience providers. We can arrange all types of things, even the kind of thing you don't know to ask for. If you give us as much detail as possible about the client and like their interest in their budget, we will be recommending these to you. Okay. So can we book just hotels? No. We don't book just single hotels, and that's because our contracts stipulate that we have to package multiple services together. We cannot split them up a la carte. That also means that our pricing is all packaged. It is not broken out. So if that is a need for you or your client, we're not going to be the best fit for that, all right? Everything is packaged up into one price, and our contracts are pretty specific about it. Could we book just a driver guide? We will occasionally do this. It depends on the size of the booking and like what's the current volume that we're dealing with. Generally, we only take on trips where we're handling the full itinerary and we keep most of our guides dates open to service those clients. But we have before done stuff where it's like just a driver guide. For example, private shore excursions, we can handle things like that. So what type of hotels? We do 4 and 5 star. We don't go below that. But we have in terms of the style, we've got a wide range, right? You got city hotels, boutique properties, manor houses, country houses, luxury resorts, castle stays. We, in general, like to work with properties that are, that have a sense of place. All right. Do we pay commission? Yeah. Of course. And you let us know when you reach out. It is, and I ask this on the intake form, if you prefer commissionable or if you prefer net, we are happy to price either way. But yes, we do commission, and it's paid out after final payment if there's no pending changes, or we do it shortly after client travel. We pride ourselves on being very fast in our commission turnaround, so you're not chasing us or waiting like some what you have to do with some major hotel chains that we won't name names. Okay. So what currency did we price in? We do local currency, right? So it's either going to be in euro or in Great British pounds, depending on the destination. So if we're booking Ireland, it'll be in euro. In the UK, it will be in pounds. What is our turnaround time for an itinerary? Generally, we aim for 2 days. Sometimes we're faster. Sometimes in high season, it could take a little longer. But generally, once we get the information that we need from you about the client, we aim for a 2-day turnaround on that first proposal. All right. If it's something that's going to take a lot longer, we try to let you know up front so that you're not waiting. And what if I'm very unfamiliar with the destination? Listen, that's not a problem. We view that as our job. You know the traveler. We know the destination. And with our powers combined, we put together great trips together. Okay. And then for payments, generally speaking, it's a 20% deposit due at time of booking to lock it in, and the balance is due 30 days out. That's our payment policy. It's the only time it changes is if we were booking something that had a lot of stuff that needed to be locked in with payment for us ahead of time. We would tell you that in advance, but that's our policy. All right. Now, as I wrap up here, I know we've covered a lot, but what I really want you to take away from this is that my goal with Northern Leisure is that we have a profitable partnership with travel advisors, right? Yes, DMCs all over the world can create a beautiful itinerary on your behalf. We do that too. And in fact, we white label our itineraries so they're all branded to you. I'll ask you for your logo when you reach out, so that everything goes out with your stuff on it. But more than that, we want to be your strategic partner for Ireland and the UK. I strongly, strongly believe in the supplier-advisor relationship. It's the backbone of the industry. So we rely heavily on our advisor partners to just know the traveler, right? You're shortcutting that vetting process. You know the traveler, you know that they're ready. And in turn, you can rely on us to put together beautiful proposals and make sure everything runs smoothly on the ground. We have a 24/7 emergency line that your clients can access when they're traveling, so that we are available if anything should arise, right? To give you that extra peace of mind. Now, we've obviously covered a lot here. If you have any questions at all, if you want to reach out with a request or you just have a question, here's where you can reach me. All right. So Kate at Northern Leisure. I'm at Northern Leisure on Instagram. Or if you do have a request, you can pop on over to northernleisure.com, and that's where you can drop in our intake form there. All right. So I can't wait to talk to you soon.